All right, so today we're going to be taking a deep dive into the future of work,
The future of work.
how companies are finding and keeping the best people.
Mhm.
And our guide for this deep dive is this report, Future of Talent Acquisition and Recruitment 2025.
Yeah, this report is, I think, especially interesting now because we're in this weird economic climate,
Right.
right? We have all this talk about recession,
Right.
but at the same time, a lot of companies are still hiring pretty aggressively but strategically.
Right.
So I think what we're going to be unpacking here could be a secret weapon for you, whether you're on the hiring side or whether you're hoping to be hired.
Absolutely. And this report isn't just some theory. It's based on a survey by recruiter.com and FindDem, and they got insights from some really big companies like Intuit and ServiceNow.
Yeah,
So I think it's really interesting to see kind of where they're seeing the intersection of technology and AI, and then also that human element of recruiting.
the human element.
Yes,
That is.
absolutely. One of the things that jumped out at me right away was that despite all this talk about, potential recession, most companies are actually planning to hire even more people by 2025.
Yeah.
Um, are you seeing that out in the real world?
I am absolutely seeing that, and it's not just random hiring or growth.
Right.
It's the report calls it strategic hiring, and it really comes down to filling those roles that are going to keep a company ahead of the curve.
Okay.
So, for example, they talk about Intuit
Hmm.
and how they're really doubling down on hiring people with AI and data skills
Uh-huh.
because they see that as the future of their business.
Okay, so it's not just about filling seats, it's about finding the right people.
The right people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, that makes sense. But the report also says that while recruiters feel pretty confident in their ability to attract talent, there's this gap,
Yeah.
this effectiveness gap.
The effectiveness gap. Yeah. And that's really fascinating because you have companies that think they're doing well attracting talent, but only a tiny fraction, like 8% rate themselves as top notch. So it's almost like they're giving themselves a pat on the back, but at the same time, they know they have a lot of room for improvement.
Right, so they know they need to step up their game.
They got to step it up.
Yeah, and the report talks about this productivity tipping point that recruiting is hitting.
Mhm.
What does that mean for like the average person, who's looking for a job?
Yeah, I think you can think about it like this. The old ways of doing things just aren't working as well anymore.
Okay.
Recruiters are facing some serious challenges, especially when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion goals.
Uh-huh.
The report says 34% of recruiters are struggling to meet those DEI goals,
Wow.
and nearly 38% say finding qualified candidates is their biggest headache.
Oh, wow.
So, imagine you're someone who's trying to land a job. This is the reality that you're walking into.
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, so let's talk tech.
Yeah.
Everybody's talking about AI changing everything.
Right.
Is recruiting tech actually keeping up?
Not really. And the truth is a lot of the recruiting tech out there still relies on these kind of outdated processes, and it leads to frustration on both sides.
Right, right. And this is where it gets really interesting. The report says that almost 70% of companies use LinkedIn Recruiter,
Yeah.
but most of them aren't seeing amazing results.
Right.
Why is that?
Well, think about it. Everyone's fishing from the same pond.
Right.
Relying too heavily on just one platform,
Yeah.
it just isn't effective anymore.
Okay, so it's like you can't expect to find, a rare gem by just looking in the most obvious place.
Exactly.
Okay, so if you're out there job hunting, don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Right. The report also says that companies are feeling pretty good about their data,
Mm-hmm.
but there's always a but, right?
There's always a but. And the problem is that a lot of companies are tracking the wrong metrics.
Okay.
So they're fixated on things like the number of applicants they get instead of focusing on the outcome, like the quality of their hires. And this leads to bad decisions and wasted resources.
So the report has this great quote, data or it didn't happen.
I love that.
Does that mean like recruiters are turning into like data nerds now?
I mean, data skills are definitely becoming essential for recruiters,
Yeah.
but the human element, I think, is still crucial.
Okay.
Things like empathy, communication, truly understanding what motivates a person. Those are things that AI just can't replicate.
Right. So it's about finding that sweet spot
That sweet spot.
between the tech and the human touch.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Which brings me to something that I think is probably on a lot of listeners' minds with all of this change. What happens to the jobs in talent acquisition?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think while some tasks might shift, recruiting itself isn't going anywhere.
Okay.
But the roles are going to become more strategic, more focused on things that AI just can't handle.
Oh, okay. That's reassuring. Um, and speaking of the future, the report actually suggests that the lines are blurring between who's recruiting who.
Exactly. And we're seeing the rise of talent communities and these internal talent marketplaces, which really flips the script on how companies source their candidates.
Okay, now that sounds intriguing. We're going to have to dig into that in the next part of our deep dive.
Let's do it.
So we were just talking about how the tables are turning in recruiting with these talent communities and internal talent marketplaces becoming more important.
Yeah, it's a fascinating shift.
Well,
Imagine instead of just waiting for applications to roll in,
right.
companies are building these networks of potential candidates,
Uh-huh.
people they can connect with when the time is right.
So they're kind of like laying the groundwork in advance, like cultivating a garden or something.
Exactly. It's about nurturing those relationships early on.
Okay.
And these communities can include, former interns, past applicants, even people who just follow the company because they're interested.
So social media must be a big part of this.
Absolutely. Platforms like LinkedIn, Twitter, even niche online forums are becoming fertile ground for building these communities. It's about being present where the talent already is, rather than just hoping they stumble upon a job posting.
Right. I can see why that would be appealing to companies. But what's in it for the job seekers?
Well, for starters, it can give you a serious leg up.
Uh,
You get insider access to information about the company culture, the kinds of roles they're looking to fill,
okay.
and sometimes even early access to job postings.
So it's like getting a VIP pass to the hiring process.
You could say that, yeah, it's a chance to network with people inside the company, build relationships, show your genuine interest before you even apply.
Right.
Which, let's face it, is way less intimidating than just sending your resume into the black hole of an online application system.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Okay, so those are talent communities.
Yes.
Now, the report also mentions these internal talent marketplaces, which sounds really interesting.
Yeah, this is where things get really interesting.
Hmm.
Companies are recognizing that their existing employees are a gold mine of talent.
Right.
So instead of always looking externally, they're creating these systems for employees to explore opportunities within the company.
Hmm.
Express interest in different roles or even gain new skills through mentorships or training programs.
So it's like promoting from within to a whole new level.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I imagine that does wonders for employee morale too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
When employees feel like the company's invested in their growth, they're more likely to stick around.
Right. It's a
It's a
win-win.
win-win.
Okay, so with all this talk about talent communities and internal marketplaces, does that mean the traditional job posting is like going extinct?
I don't know if I'd say extinct,
Okay.
but it's definitely evolving. Companies are realizing they need to be more proactive and creative in how they find talent.
Okay.
Job postings might still exist, but they're just one piece of a much larger puzzle.
Yeah, it's like companies are shifting from fishing with a single line to casting a wide net.
Exactly. And this ties into another big trend. The report highlights the rise of the gig economy.
Okay, so everyone's talking about the gig economy, but what does it actually mean for the future of work?
Well, think about it. The old model was, go to college, get a job, climb the ladder.
Right.
But the gig economy is all about flexibility,
Mm.
autonomy, people choosing to work on projects that align with their interests and skills.
So it's like being your own boss, choosing gigs that fit your lifestyle.
Precisely. And this shift has huge implications for how companies find and retain talent.
Okay. Of all ears, tell me more.
Well, now companies are competing not just with other companies,
Right.
but with the entire concept of freelancing.
Okay.
They need to be more flexible, more agile,
Uh-huh.
offer competitive rates and benefits, even for short-term projects.
Okay.
Otherwise, those talented freelancers are going to take their skills elsewhere.
So it's a whole new ballgame.
It's a whole new ballgame.
Yeah. And companies need to adapt or they risk losing out on some serious talent.
Absolutely. But there's another critical element that we haven't touched on yet.
Okay, you've
Yeah.
got my attention. What is
It's the often overlooked but incredibly important candidate experience.
Okay, so I've heard that term before, but I'm not always sure what it really means. Is it just like a fancy way of saying be nice to applicants?
It's more than just being nice.
Okay.
It's about the entire journey a candidate goes through, from their first interaction with the company all the way to receiving a job offer or a rejection.
So it's kind of like customer service, but for potential employees.
Exactly. And it's more important than ever because in this competitive job market, Candidates have choices.
Right.
They can afford to be picky.
Especially if they have in-demand skills.
Right. So if a company makes the hiring process long and confusing or just plain unpleasant,
Yeah.
those top candidates might just walk away and go somewhere else.
Right. They'll take their talents to a company that respects their time
Exactly.
and makes them feel valued.
Precisely. And that's why companies are finally starting to prioritize the candidate experience.
Okay, so what are they doing differently?
Well, they're streamlining the application process, getting rid of those endless forms and repetitive questions.
So no more radio silence. I like it.
And they're also trying to make interviews more engaging and less intimidating.
Okay.
Instead of grilling candidates with rapid-fire questions,
Right.
they're having more natural conversations, trying to get to know the person behind the resume.
Because at the end of the day, hiring is about finding the right person, not just the right set of skills on paper.
That's so true. And that's what the candidate experience is all about, making the process feel human and respectful,
Yeah.
whether someone gets the job or not.
Because even if someone isn't the right fit for a particular role, they might tell their friends about their positive experience or
Wow.
even apply it again in the future.
Exactly. A good candidate experience is an investment in the company's reputation.
It's like planting seeds that could lead to future hires down the road.
I like that.
But we can't talk about the future of anything without talking about the role of technology.
Right.
So what does the report say about how tech is shaping the candidate experience?
Well, the report digs into some really exciting advancements, especially with AI.
Yeah.
We're seeing AI-powered chatbots being used to answer candidate questions, schedule interviews, and even provide personalized feedback.
So it's like having a 24/7 virtual assistant dedicated to making the hiring process smoother.
Exactly.
Ah.
AI is also being used to analyze resumes,
Yeah.
identify top candidates, and even predict which candidates are most likely to be successful in a given role.
Okay, now that's impressive, but I have to ask, does that mean human recruiters are going to be replaced by robots?
Not at all.
Okay.
Think of it this way. AI can handle a lot of the repetitive, time-consuming tasks,
Right.
which frees up recruiters to focus on what they do best, building relationships, understanding those human nuances that AI just can't grasp, and ultimately making those tough judgment calls that require human intuition.
Right, so it's not about humans versus robots. It's
Yeah.
about humans and robots working together, each playing to their strengths.
Precisely. And this theme of collaboration really runs through the entire report.
Okay, speaking of the report, it also gives us a glimpse into what the talent acquisition landscape might look like in 2025.
Yes.
What stands out to you?
Well, one of the key takeaways is that the role of the recruiter is becoming even more strategic.
Okay.
Recruiters are going to need to be more than just matchmakers.
Uh-huh.
They'll need to be talent advisors, consultants, data analysts, all rolled into one.
So they need to be business savvy, data driven, and have those amazing people skills.
Yeah, it's a tall order.
It is.
They'll need to deeply understand the company's goals, the competitive landscape, and the latest trends in the job market.
So recruiters of the future are basically going to be superheroes.
Maybe,
Mm.
but they'll also need to keep their human skills sharp.
Okay.
Because no matter how advanced technology becomes, the ability to connect with people on a human level, build trust, understand their motivations will always be essential.
It sounds like the report is giving us a lot to think about in terms of, what skills will be most valuable in the future of recruiting.
Absolutely. And the good news is that the report doesn't just tell us what the future might look like. It gives us some practical advice on how to prepare for it.
Okay. I'm definitely ready for some actionable advice. Lay it on me.
Well, one of the most important pieces of advice, and it's really applicable to everyone, not just recruiters, is to embrace lifelong learning.
Yeah, I think we can all agree that learning never stops. But what are some of the key areas recruiters should be focusing on?
Well, data analysis is a big one. Being able to make sense of data and use it to make informed decisions is becoming essential in pretty much every field.
Ah.
And recruiting is no exception.
So recruiters need to be comfortable with numbers and be able to tell a story with the data they're seeing.
Exactly. And then there's all things digital mastering.
Yeah.
Social media, creating engaging content, understanding how to reach candidates online.
Right.
It's not enough to just post a job description and hope for the best anymore.
It's about meeting candidates where they are and building relationships online.
Right. And of course, we can't forget about those essential human skills, communication, collaboration, problem-solving, adaptability.
Right.
These are the things that will always set humans apart from robots.
I think we've covered a lot of ground here, but there's still more to explore in this report. Specifically, I'm curious to hear more about this employer branding thing.
Ah, yes. Employer branding. It might sound a bit fluffy at first glance,
Yeah.
but it's a crucial piece of the puzzle.
Well, let's dive into that in the next part of our deep dive. Okay, so we've talked about talent communities, AI, the evolving role of the recruiter. But before we wrap up this deep dive into the future of talent acquisition, you mentioned this thing called employer branding.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, it's always sounded a little vague to me.
Mm-hmm.
Is it really that important?
It's more important now than ever.
Okay.
Think about it like this, your employer brand is your reputation as an employer.
Okay.
And in today's competitive job market, it's what helps you stand out from the crowd.
So it's like a company's personality, like the values they project, the culture they foster, how they treat their employees.
Mm-hmm.
It's all those intangible things that make people actually want to work there.
You nailed it. And in this age of social media and online reviews,
Right.
your employer brand is constantly being shaped, whether you're actively managing it or not.
That's a good point. You can't control the narrative anymore.
Exactly.
So it's important to be proactive
Be proactive.
about building a strong employer brand.
A strong, authentic employer brand.
Okay, so how does a company actually do that?
Well,
Where do they even begin?
it starts with defining your employee value proposition.
Okay.
What makes you a great place to work?
Uh-huh.
What unique benefits and perks do you offer? What's your company culture really like?
So it's about figuring out what makes you special,
Yeah.
what sets you apart from all the other companies out there,
Mm-hmm.
vying for top talent. It's like your unique selling point, but for attracting employees.
Exactly. Once you
Mhm.
define that, then it's about communicating it to the right people.
Okay, so I imagine that involves your website, social media job postings.
All of that, and even more, your employees can be your best brand ambassadors.
Oh, interesting.
Potential candidates are way more likely to trust what they hear from real employees than what they read in some polished marketing material.
That makes sense. People want to hear the inside scoop.
Yeah.
Like, what's it really like?
The unfiltered truth.
Yeah, to work at a company.
And the report highlights some really creative ways companies are building their employer brand.
Okay.
They're creating videos that showcase their company culture. They're hosting online Q&A sessions with employees even giving virtual tours of their offices.
So they're letting candidates kind of get a glimpse behind the scenes.
Exactly. They're showing their personality
Yeah.
and letting potential candidates see if it'd be a good fit.
Right. It sounds like authenticity is key.
Authenticity is key,
Yeah, no one wants to feel like they're being sold a bill of goods.
especially younger generations.
Right.
They want to work for companies whose values align with their own
Uh-huh.
and who are genuinely making a positive impact on the world.
Okay.
They're doing their research, they're reading online reviews, they're asking tough questions.
Yeah.
Companies can't just fake it anymore.
They need to walk the walk, not just talk the talk.
Right, and that's actually a good thing because when companies invest in building a strong employer brand, it benefits everyone.
How so?
Well, for starters, it helps them attract and retain top talent.
Uh-huh.
People want to work for companies with great reputations.
Mm-hmm.
It can also reduce turnover because employees are happier and more engaged.
Right. And it creates like a more positive and authentic company culture overall.
A win-win all around.
So to sum it up, employer branding matters.
It matters.
It's not just some fluffy HR concept. It's a crucial part of finding and keeping the best people
It is.
in today's world.
Absolutely. If you're a company, invest in building an employer brand that reflects your values, your culture, your commitment to your employees.
Mm.
And if you're a job seeker, do your research comping. Pay attention to those company reviews and look for companies whose values align with your own.
Right.
When you find a company that's a good fit, it can make all the difference in your career and your overall happiness.
Well said. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive into the future of talent acquisition.
It's been a good one.
It has. We've explored talent communities, AI, the evolving role of the recruiter, and the importance of employer branding. It's clear that the world of work is changing rapidly.
It is, but it's also an incredibly exciting time full of opportunities for innovation and growth.
So embrace the change, stay curious, and never stop learning.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
If you want to dive even deeper into this topic, I highly recommend checking out the full report, Future of Talent Acquisition and Recruitment 2025, on recruiter.com and findem.ai.
It's packed with valuable insights, data, and practical advice to help you navigate this ever-evolving world of work.
Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and we'll see you next time for another fascinating exploration of the world of work.